Congratulations to Toulouse, who secured their 6th European Cup win after extra time at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. This week, we turn our attention back to the Gallagher Premiership and its semi-final time. And joining myself and the columnists today to preview Northampton versus Saracens and Bath versus Sale is former England and Northampton scrum-half Lee Dickson.
And we're off.
We are off. Okay, we'll do a little bit around the Champions Cup. Obviously, first of all, congratulations to Toulouse, and congratulations to myself, Brendan and Chris, as we were spot on with our prediction. So well done to us. Their 6th title sort of further cements their status as Kings of Europe, and as predicted, it was a hell of a game. I don't think anyone said it would go to extra time, but I think we probably knew that that was on the table. We'll discuss it briefly before turning our attention to the Gallagher Premiership semis, which are coming up. It's Friday night game and then a Saturday game, Northampton Saints, Bath Sale away. And joining us to preview those games is a former Northampton captain and ex-England scrum half, Lee Dickson. Lee, you're in Bordeaux.
I am, yes, I am. School holidays, so we got a week off half term, so we brought the family over to Bordeaux for a little bit.
Making the most of it.
Yeah, it's quite nice, actually. I get to book my holidays now and actually go on them rather than only having 5 weeks off a year.
I suppose, you've probably been to Bordeaux several times, but from a rugby point of view, how is it?
No, never.
No? Really?
No. Never came to Bordeaux from a rugby point of view. You should always be like Clermont or Montpellier and places like that, but no. Bordeaux never was on. They weren't really around when I was
No, they were probably there for a while, weren't they? They weren't a big team in your time.
No, so I'm old now, you got to remember that.
Well, you say that. Peter O'Mahony confused you with Alex Mitchell a few months ago, so you're clearly not that old.
He's done it a few times. So the other day in the paper, when they lost to someone, it was me rather than Alex again. I get it sent to me all the time, don't
we? Are you offended, Lee, by being compared with someone as slow as Alex Mitchell?
No, I'm quite happy that my name's still knocking around, and someone's saying nice things about me, which is really weird.
Oh, that is funny. So you're director of rugby at Barnard Castle at the moment.
Yeah. So I've done it now 5 years. So in my 5th year, which is really good. So it's my old school as well, which worked out perfectly for me.
What does summer term look like as a director of rugby?
Cricket. Bit of cricket. Getting prepared for the next rugby season. So I'm into all my sports. I love all sports. So I've got the under 14 A girls cricket team, which I absolutely love. It's good. It's nice to be out in the sun a little bit more if it was sunny. Nice to see a different sport, but no, it's pretty much that. But preparing for the rugby season coming ahead after the holidays.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, I knew you'd gone to school. It's very full circle of you to finish where you started, which is really, really nice. Champions Cup, let's have a sort of cast your eye back. It was every bit as close as we expected. I'm frustrated because I was very close to mentioning extra time last week and then didn't for whatever reason. And now it just sounds like I'm saying that to sound clever.
Oh, the spirit of
exactly. We previewed the head-to-heads and obviously Gibson Park Dupont came up. There was a winner in that battle, although Dupont, maybe he played more like a back rower than he did as a scrum half on the day. Lee, have you ever seen a scrum half? I think it was 5 turnovers at the breakdown. Have you ever seen a scrum half play like that in a game, let alone a final?
No, I don't. Well, to be fair, I don't think anyone plays like he does. I think he's got every sort of trick in the book. He can play like a back row. He's got the flair. He's got the fundamentals of his kick game. He never ever seems flustered, which is probably the biggest thing. I remember I played against him when he was 17 years old at Cast. Lad came off the bench, 20 minutes ago, and you could see how good he was. Then he was still raw, but you could see he had the potential to be something completely different. The frame on him at 17 years old and stuff. So yeah, but no, he was pretty much the general in that game. Everything revolved around him. But Gibson Park as well. He's a phenomenal scrum half, and I think he probably had less moments in the game, but he did a lot of the mopping up work for Leinster. A couple of them cover tackles he did on Dupont, the tempo he brings. But when it's easy for a scrum half when you play behind a pack like both of them do, to be fair. You know, I remember my time at Northampton, and I was in an armchair the whole time, and you can look like a world beater. But then Dupont's other side is when they are under the cosh, he seems to put his Superman cape on and start making, you know, turnovers left, right, and centre. So that's the difference from probably just sitting in your armchair, but having that world class, which he does have.
And at the age of 27, he's still learning, because I remember watching his first Sevens tournament, and the first minute he came on, he did 2 of those turnovers. None of the flash stuff, just the real nitty gritty. As we discussed last week, that actually is what makes him brilliant. But he's added that to his game in about, in the last year, I think, the absolute turnover king. He's always been a great tackler and very physical in the breakdown and in the contact area. But I hadn't really seen him do those turnovers until the last 12 months.
Yeah, but I think he's already had it in, but he's got players around him that do that work for him. But the fact that he's chasing back, that break from Sheehan, he's chased back, and he's pretty much a lost cause, it could be, but Kinghorn's come across and he's the first one there, and he's such a small, squat man where you can't move him because he's a big boy when he's like in that position. So, fair play to him.
Just broadening that final out a bit, Lee. We have this discussion quite often. When you were playing, or when you're watching now, do you prefer 59-47, or do you prefer a game where every inch was bitterly fought over? I mean, there were two tries in the game, and they were very, very late. In fact, they were both in extra time, weren't they?
Yeah, both extra time.
I suppose it's the balance between entertainment and appealing to the purist or the traditionalist or whatever it is. I mean, rugby's in some strain on this at the moment. I'm just wondering where you stand and where you see it going.
I see the best of both, really. I'm a big believer of, final should be won on small margins. There's a reason the 2 teams are in the final, because the 2 best teams around, and you never want to see a 40-something-5 final because it's just pointless. So that, when you hear the commentary and you watch the game, the speed it was played at, you can see it was like a test match arena. And you want that from rugby. It was an exciting 15-all at the end. There was still loads going on. There was loads of breaks. Yes, they didn't score the tries anymore, but that's because the defences are so good. But there was a lot of entertainment in that game for a 15-all. And then, you send it to extra time and boys are getting tired a little bit, and a couple of tries here and there. And, they were well-worked tries. But I prefer the tight games rather than the washouts. Or, I love my Super Rugby, but sometimes I watch that and it's 40-all and you're like, it's great, but where's the tackling?
So on a level of 1 to 10, Lee, how entertaining did you find Northampton 90, Gloucester 0?
0. I've been on the other end of that before, plenty of times. But it was like a team run for them. It was a glorified team run for them. It wasn't one where you're excited and thinking, oh, well, this is great preparation for a semi-final or a final. It was pretty much, let's have a team run, let's get stuff out. And I found it quite embarrassing in the end, if I'm honest. You take nothing away from Northampton. God, they are playing probably some of the best rugby they've ever played at the moment. And you can only ever beat what's in front of you sometimes. And sometimes a Gloucester team with no stars in could have gone there and it could have been a nail-biter. But, Northampton have players all over the park now. And the 90-0 is great, but, they've been taking teams apart all season, from 50 point of view. So you can't take that away from them. But, yeah, I'm more of a, it'll be a different beast this week when Saracens come around, I imagine.
And I suppose, just the last one from me for a mo, Northampton's style of rugby, if you are going to outclass someone, you're going to outclass them by a very long way, aren't you? Because you can score very heavily. There are sides in the Premiership who are equally effective in terms of getting up towards the top of the table, but they don't punish in the way that Northampton do with an all-court game that you have.
Yeah, it's at the moment, Vesti, Douse, they've completely transformed that team. It's a delight to watch, if I'm honest. We 10 years ago did what we did, and you watch them and you think they are way above what we were from a rugby point of view, the backs, forwards, handling, things like that. Some of the tries they score and some of the sort of infusing they have to go from their own 22 rather than just box kick. that's been installed in them, and they buy into it, and they all know their role, and they all know what they're doing. And some of their back three and wingers and things are just frightening quick, which, scares any team. Now from Northampton point of view, line out on our 10-metre line, they could go. So you can't put three in the backfield. So they've played this game where teams now are worried about everything, because they've also got the power game with Courtney Lawes and all that up front, which they can do the nitty gritty, but they're also scared of the outside backs.
Just before we fully transition into Gallagher Premiership stuff, I feel like one player that needs singling out from the final, one other player as well as Dupont, is Jack Willis.
Yeah.
And I'll bring in Nick here after a 2-week hiatus. Nice to have you back, Nick. How did you feel watching a 9 out of 10 Jack Willis performance in a Champions Cup final? I think it was 27 or 29 tackles I've read.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what's interesting is how we talk about Dupont taking his game on, is how Jack Willis, since he's gone to Toulouse, has taken his game on. Because his work rate was phenomenal. I'm sometimes a little bit not dubious, but some tackle stats have to be taken with a pinch of salt, because lots of them are assists and so on. But I don't think that was the case with him. He was skittling people throughout the game, but also his work over the ball. He didn't do as much carrying as he has done in some of Toulouse's previous games, because the game was that much tighter. But I think what he contributed in terms of physicality, being able to read the game, be in the right place at the right time, was exceptional. And what's also exceptional, in a stupid sense, is that England will not be incorporating him in their summer tour to New Zealand, and they definitely need him.
And just before we finally move on, we have been calling it for 2 or 3 years now, Leinster breakdown. They're illegal. Matthew Carley didn't target them. He just refereed the breakdown, and they conceded 10 breakdown penalties. And that was accentuated by the fact that Toulouse are, in their own right, a brilliant breakdown team. They made Carley make the decisions. They had Jack Willis, they had Dupont on the day, they had Cross, they had Marchand, they had Mavaka. They just put it there. They knew exactly where the Achilles heel of Leinster was, and always has been. And then they got just reward in the end.
We've obviously had the discussion about overseas players several times, and I'm not going to reopen that door. But from a sort of, given the ruling, and that ruling is obviously unchangeable, that's actually become fairly clear this week. And this is a question to the floor. If you're an England fan, do you want Jack Willis to keep, succeeding, doing well in Toulouse and not playing for England, or do you want to see him come back?
I want to see him do both. Why can't you do both? Why can't you be a brilliant Toulouse player and a brilliant England player?
That wasn't an option.
It is an option.
No,
of course it's an option. It's a route that some people don't want to go down, but it's obviously an option.
Yeah, and they've saddled themselves as well with exceptional circumstances. Exceptional circumstances can be invoked for any number of reasons. And I'd say trying to win a series in New Zealand for the first time is an exceptional circumstance. So use everything that you've got.
Well, I asked that question trying to not open that door and managed to open it wide.
You're always open it. I sort of agree. I sort of agree with everyone else. I think I read the other day that when Sexton went to racing, they had a rule. Ireland had a rule that he had to play in Ireland as well, and they opened a different rule for him, and he came back and played for Ireland. And I think we shoot ourselves in the foot. I think you look at someone like Willis, how much his game's come on, and he's been in a different environment, had to learn how to play differently. For rugby players, I think you need that. I think if they can go and experience, Kiwis do it. I know they're having a bit of a to do with it at the moment in Japan, but the South Africans do it, and look at them. We want the Gallagher Premiership to be amazing. We get that, but I think sometimes players going away and seeing how rugby's played in different environments only can help England. And for me, Jack Willis definitely should be in and around that tour. Yeah, we've got some great 7s and 6s and back row in England. We have, but his journey was different from a Wasp point of view and things like that. So I also feel that he's not gone by just out of spite. He's gone because he had to go. So that should be a different rule.
Yeah.
From memory, Lee, did James Haskell come back from his foreign travels less or more annoying than he had been before he went?
to be fair, I don't mind him. I don't mind him. He always came back with full of beans. You know what he's like. Always did. So no, but he was the first probably one to actually go and do that. He it was, I don't think I ever would have even crossed my mind of things, but fair play to him. He went to New Zealand, Japan, and did what he did, and and he experienced different things. His rugby, sort of journey that he had, had loads of different things, whereas mine was pretty clean. It was Northampton, but it was Newcastle, Northampton, Bedford. Mine was clean, whereas some of these players now, and if my kids and stuff went into it, I'd probably encourage them to get away for a little bit and see different sides.
It was a serious point couched in an attempted joke. I mean, he did come back, enriched, didn't he? Probably just as a human being as much as anything, but certainly as a rugby player, he did different things. I remember talking to Delalio years ago, and he was sort of umming and ahhing about doing the same, making the same kind of leap. He wanted to play in France at one point, but he didn't want it quite enough to leave Wasps, which was so deeply sort of ingrained in him. And it's a tough decision for people.
It's really hard to leave. I had opportunities to go to France and things like that. It's a big old decision to do. You're moving your whole family, or you're moving your life away. I think it's probably a little bit easier now. I think how the world's gone now. But James, obviously, he was the first to go over to New Zealand. But as I said again, he's around different coaches. He's around different players. The back row over there might do things a little bit different. He picks that up and he brings it back to England. And he did come back a better player and same old James Haskell, but a great player.
And actually, that's the point there, Lee. From memory, as a player, he didn't make any particular waves in New Zealand. Johnny Sexton didn't have a particularly great season or season and a half with Racing, but when they came back, there was an immediate payoff in their rugby intellect and knowledge.
I think sometimes you can become stale with the same day in, day out. I was lucky, I was coached by Jim Melander for 8 years. It was superb, Dorian West, but I didn't have that probably. I've only had 4 coaches over my professional career. Some people have had 15s and they might be better players. And it's not right or wrong. You have some players, Ben Youngs, for example, he's been at Leicester for the whole time and he's been most successful scrum-half and England player. So different mindsets have different things, I think. There's no right or wrong decision in rugby, I don't think. But I think more and more this younger generation are wanting to branch out a little bit more.
I think this
when
whole
you say
argument,
there are no rights and wrongs in rugby, just one thing that I'd like to sort of raise before we move on is Gloucester 2 wrongs. One, putting out the team that got beaten 90-0, and then predicating everything on a Challenge Cup final, in which they then selected the wrong front row to start the game. And, you saw again the influence of South Africa's concentration on the set piece and how they made that mistake. As soon as Gototsev came on at the start of the second half, they sent the Sharks into reverse. And if they'd done that at the beginning of the game, when they were all over them for the first sort of 15, 20 minutes, if they'd had a scrum rather than conceded 3 or 4 scrum penalties in the Sharks 22, they would have been in with a very, very clear shout of winning that final. Instead, it went away from them at a rate of knots. So they got punished, in 2 senses. 1, devaluing the Premiership. 2, being, being overwhelmed in the Challenge Cup. And it's something that English clubs need to look at. And incidentally, when you were talking about Super Rugby, the differentials and the margins in the Premiership now are higher than they are in Super Rugby, and not by a bit, by quite a lot. The level of
with the Challenge Cup one, it's all hindsight, isn't it? It's coaching, it's hindsight. They made a decision to go 40 and 40 for the props and stuff. And if they could have held on in that first half and, probably should have scored a couple of their opportunities, that's down to lack of that sort of killer touch at the end. If they had scored a couple of them tries, it could have been a completely different game. And that's where rugby is an horrific game to be on the other side of. If they'd have hung on and then brought him on in 40 minutes and been in within the game or leading 40-0, we could have been talking a completely different chat here. But it didn't go their way, and they didn't get them scores, and then the South African scrum took over, and then the next thing leads to the next thing. But it was close really, the game up to 15 minutes, wasn't it, really?
Very.
Rugby is hindsight. We can always say it. We can always sit here and say this and this. I agree with you on the 90-0 one. That's probably them just resting some of their players, and the players sometimes want to be rested, or they just want to fly into every week and go for it. But from a finals and things in that point of view, it's all them tiny little margins that could go for you or could go for you.
Let's preview those semi-finals now. Lee, you've kind of touched upon this already, but just thinking back to 10 years ago, and Saints were 2 finals in 2 years, lost one, then won one. You were the try scorer in the first, and then the second went to extra time. Yeah, I think I was there actually. God, it feels like a long time ago now. But how does this team compare? You've already said that this team plays a very different brand of rugby. If both 15s, and I suppose Courtney Lawes would be in both, squared up, at Twickenham, who would win?
I think it's a hard question. I'll always back ourselves, to win. I don't think you can compare as much. Rugby's moved on too much. I think the team that we had 10 years ago, we'd been together for 8 years. We'd been through some pretty low points, losing in the Heineken Cup final. We've lost in semi-finals. We had our fair share of losing big finals or big semi-finals or games. And then that season when we won, we only just got into the top 4. We scraped in. And then we obviously went on to do the double. But our team was built on foundations of, as said before, our scrum and line out was absolutely superb. You've got Majati Tongaweer and Dylan Hartley. They were demolishing French packs, in Heineken Cup semi-finals and stuff. So we were cornerstone. We had a simple game, forwards around the corner. Stephen Myler kicked his points, did the corners. We had a bit of, Jimmy Downing and people like that, Luther Burrell, Ben Foden and Chris Ashton in the back. So we were littered with some very exciting players, but we were very simple, and we got the job done. And people struggled to play with our tempo and things like that. So it's hard to compare this group of players that they've got. Your forwards play like backs, your backs play like forwards sometimes, and it's a joy to watch this group. I think Alex Mitchell over the last 2 years is arguably probably the best scrum-half in England. How he makes that team tick. I think the added value of Finn Smith at 10 for such a young fly half. God, he leads and controls a group of players. Courtney's just getting better week on, week out. So I don't think you can compare the two teams. It's been great to see, because obviously 10 years ago we did it, and I'm desperate for this group of players to do it because I think they deserve it.
Do you think
we talked about tempo quite a bit actually with scrum halves, Lee, and you were the epitome of a tempo scrum half? I mean, you were quite honest when you were playing about there's things I don't really do, or I'm not my strong points, but I'm gonna get to every ruck, and I'm gonna move this game on. And you did it incredibly effectively, which is why you ended up in the England side. We've seen England teams in relatively recent years really struggle for tempo. Can you put your finger on, because this is almost one of the sort of mystical aspects of rugby, is how you get tempo into a team, because everyone's looking for it.
They are, but it's a game plan. I think it comes down to fundamentally how the coach wants to play. So Jim Mallender, when I signed at Northampton, I had at England, and the way that we wanted to play, he was very clear of, Dicko, you get to every breakdown, you move the ball as quick as you can. It's into Myler's hands as quick as you can. We don't wait. If we're waiting, the forwards are getting rollocked or Myler's not playing. That's what they wanted to play. And as the game went on, that was my sole job, was just... And then as I got older and a little bit better, I actually had to add a few bits onto my game. But to start with, I was very raw. My whole game was built on getting to every breakdown and priding myself on being the fittest player on the pitch. And even in the 60th minute, being able to do that. And we were trained like that. And that was Jim's philosophy. I think with England, I think it's obviously when you get to that test arena, there's not many teams that play with unbelievable tempo because defences are so good. The ruck speed, I think some teams get better ruck speed than others. But it all comes down, I think the kicking game's massively taken away from the tempo of the game. I think probably that wasn't around to start with when I played. There wasn't many slow it down box kick, whereas now it does. But I think Alex Mitchell does add that to Saints. I think Saints are playing that way. I think Dowse has installed that into them, that sort of a run first team rather than a kick first team. Obviously, you have to kick. In rugby, it's different. You have to kick. But they have that opportunity when they see a mismatch or they back themselves. Alex Mitchell is so quick and he's scary because he also has the running part of the game as well with him, whereas I didn't have when I played to start with. I developed it a little bit, but I still wasn't great at it. Whereas he has that. He must frighten people when he's coming to breakdowns because they don't know if he's going to pass, kick, run. So, yeah, the tempo side of rugby, I think, has got to be installed by coaches for me.
I haven't seen the stats, but I imagine Northampton are not top of the Caterpillar Ruck League table.
No, they're not. I don't think they are. I think they've got it. They have to have it in them. And I think this weekend as well, they will have to think a little bit like that because Sarries are, they're a great team, but Sarries are that type of team. They'll strangle you. And they'll want you to run into a hole and then turn you over and then Farrell kicks and then, I've been there with them. We played them in a semi-final and they strangled the life out of us. We tried to play, and they just strangled us and beat us in the end.
Yeah, I mean it's a really interesting one because Bristol and Northampton have something of the same blueprint this season, and obviously Saracens did a job on them at Ashton Gate, so it shows that they've still got it in their locker. I don't think that they can produce it at will in the way in which they did, but if they get it right on Friday night, it will be a very difficult game, and it will be a close game as well. Just because of that ability, as you say, to sort of get people to run into Mug's Alley and then mug them.
Yeah.
I sort of the difficulty with looking at Saracens this season is their inconsistency, but they know now that it's all on the line, as McCall has said, 2 games and or 1 game and out, and I would expect Northampton's attack to be tested much more than it has been probably at any stage in the Premiership so far this season.
Just to jump in there, sorry, very quickly, is obviously Sarries ended up finishing 4th. We didn't really say it, but obviously congratulations to Sale, who did exactly what they needed to do to not only qualify, but potentially end up with a slightly easier semi-final than Saracens. But Sarries, despite finishing 4th, are bookies' favourites to win the thing. Lee, what do you think that says about, one, how dangerous and how trialled and tested Sarries are in knockout rugby, but also maybe they are playing with the bit between their teeth, as this is the end of, the Saracens era that maybe 10 years ago started, and you probably remember that maybe in an interesting way. But the Vunipolas are going, Farrell's going. They will want to give them a send-off, and that will no doubt be taking them to that semi-final on Friday.
Yeah, that will hugely their motivation. Sarries don't become a bad team over 5-6 weeks. They have been there, done it, got the T-shirt, won big finals, lost in finals. Their coaching group is superb. I do believe that. The players, whoever they pick, they rotate, they give people opportunities. Whatever team arrives on Friday will know how to win games, and they'll know exactly what they're expected. They'll be well prepped. They'll be motivated. For the first time, I know the bookies are saying they're favourites, but for the first time I can't remember them finishing 4th. And that'll be a motivation. I've sat in the change room before where we've pretty much used motivation where, no one thinks we can win. We use the slogan, why not us? Because people were just slagging us off left, right and centre. And that's Sarries. People either love them or hate them. I've got a lot of respect for them. We had many battles with them. You know, they probably beat us more than we beat them, but it was a big, fierce rivalry. But they know how to win. You know, if it's a tight game, you know, Farrell at the helm, he knows how to win games. He knows how to put his team in the right position at the right time. He knows how to run the clock and things like that. But on the flip side of it all, you've got this young, sort of enthusiastic group that probably aren't fazed by any of this a little bit, you know, which is so exciting for them. You know, Courtney and Alex Waller have probably been there a little bit, but the rest of them haven't. And that's the exciting thing. They can go in and just play with freedom, and hopefully freedom with a little bit of control will see them over the line. But Sarries will be going in confident, even though people are saying, oh, Sarries of old, they'll be motivated and they'll be confident.
What was it between Northampton and Saracens, Lee, back in the day? I mean, there was a. I mean, it couldn't have been just you. It was.
Well, I mean, I was nice.
Well, Dylan Hartley seemed to ramp it up a bit as well.
But it was unusually lively, wasn't it? The relationship between the clubs. I mean, I know Saracens went out. They could set out to annoy people with on-pitch celebrations or supporters and all that kind of thing. But with Northampton and Saracens, it just seemed to have a little bit of extra edge to it.
There was always an edge. I think it was two teams that completely and utterly respected each other. You know, and the press and the media get hold of stuff and they blow it up to be this fierce rivalry. We hate each other and this and this. And you know, when you play rugby, and I've always said this whenever I've done any interviews, when I play rugby, I'm about Northampton Saints or whoever I'm playing with. I couldn't care if I'm playing with my best mate. I used to play against my brother, you know, when I played against Quins. When I was playing for that 80 minutes, I didn't care if he was my brother. You know, if I had to take him out and clean him out, I would. I couldn't care less. And I think that with Saints, that rivalry with Saints, because obviously they were the pinnacle, they were the top, and we wanted to be there. And, you know, we played them in semi-finals where we beat them there. They beat us at our place in semi-finals. You know, there's a few brawls that came here and there because people want to win. You know, they wanted to win, we wanted to win. We were two teams at the top of our game. There was a lot of niggle, but I think it all came down to respect. You know, we beat them in a final, and then the next day we're flying out to New Zealand with them. You know, there's 14 of us flying out to New Zealand, and it was very clear, you know, good friends, good people. You know, they weren't bad blokes. It was just when they played rugby, we were just, you had your blinkers on and you wanted to win, and they wanted to win.
That obviously still exists in this squad. And I mean, we've mentioned Courtney being a part of that final 10 years ago. That was the last time Saints were in a Gallagher Premiership final. Correct me if I'm wrong. But do you think Saints would have wanted a Sarries semi, or do you think they would have been looking to avoid it?
I think the way that they're thinking, the way they're playing, I don't think you could have guessed. I think, what was it, 1 to 8 could have been in that top 4 at one point. Would they have wanted Sarries? If I'm looking at it, Sarries rolling in, probably not. But you get what you're given. I don't think they're going to complain about it. I think they knew it was probably going to be there or thereabouts. I think if you get Sale, Sarries, or Bath, you know, they're all there for a reason. I think probably Sarries are a little bit more difficult to play against. Their defensive side of stuff probably just counteracts the attack a little bit. So Saints will have to be a little bit more savvy with that this weekend. Might have to wait a little bit, bide their time a little bit more.
That final 10 years ago, just speak about how not getting the job done the year before maybe helped in that sense. And obviously that's why I say Sarries' pedigree is tried and tested in a way that this Saints squad maybe isn't. Courtney has played in a Gallagher Premiership final. No one else in the squad has, to my memory. Alex Waller. Sorry, Alex. Just talk about how that may make a difference, and say Sarries are under the pump. They will have the heads that have been there, done it before, in a way that Saints won't have quite so many. Yeah,
it's very true. Like we learned the hard way, probably over a 3-year period. Saints, you know, we finished top of the tree, number 1. You know, everything going our way. We finished within, I think we were 10, 12 points clear at the top. Sarries rolled in, turned us over. Semi-final, I think it was a Friday night. It was a Friday night. Turned us out, completely and utterly outplayed us. You know, we froze a little bit. We were youngish as a group still. And then following year, we lost in the Hannon Cup final. by being 20-something points up. We lost again, so that was another learning. And the following year, we lost in the final to Leicester. We got red carded for whatever that was, but we were in and around it, and Leicester beat us. And then that next year, we sort of started really slow and not great, and then we just built our way up. And when we got into that final, we had a squad of, our bench was just as good as our sort of starters. So we created a squad where probably earlier on in our time at Northampton, it was your 15 players were your players. You played every week, no matter what, and you rolled out, and your bench would come on for a little bit. Whereas when we won the final and the two finals, we had squads of players where it didn't matter who started or who came off the bench. So for me, Cain was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me at Saints. He came in. I was obviously a little bit annoyed, a world-class scrum-half coming in, as I was. But Alex King was very clear with both of us and said, you're going to do 2 on, 2 off. You're going to play a 50-30 game, maybe 60-20 games, but you're just going to rotate. And it pretty much took me to the next level where I felt fresh, a lot fresher, whereas before I wanted just to play all the time. And in that final, obviously it went to extra time, but he played for 55 minutes and I played for 55, 60 minutes, and nothing changed. Alex Waller came on and did it. Dylan Hartley came on in the final for Mike Haywood. Dalson came on for for someone else. So we had a squad of players where it didn't change, and I think that helped us build into them dark places in that extra time where, we were down with 20 minutes, but 2 minutes to go, and the drop goal, was it on, and we backed ourselves to keep picking and going, and Alex Waller scored. So I think you've got to go to these horrible dark places and understand loss to get to the promised land in the end. And it could have been a completely different game if Alex didn't get that down. We wouldn't be speaking about this, but the disappointment got us over the line, and I think Saris have that. If they're in the pump, they can look at each other in a circle and be like, right, come on. They don't probably have to say it.
Fotru Lee was one of the best scrum halves no one had ever heard of, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was. I learned so much off him. And I usually, and I'll say this because everyone knew, if I played against scrum halves or scrum halves came into Northampton, I didn't get on well with them because I'm such a competitive animal there, where everything I needed to do needed to be about me. And because I wasn't very talented, I just needed to work my ass off and work hard. Whereas he came in and he completely opened my eyes up to how he was, very chilled out, how he played. He pushed me, probably not thinking he was pushing me like no one else had. And I remember doing an interview and said, like, he's completely transformed me as a human being, as a bloke, of how he's pushed me by just being so nice and helping and looking at it through this angle, Dicko, or look at it like this, or which I'd never had before. But probably because I blamed myself a little bit, because I probably had my blinkers on and thinking I need to do this. And Alex King also was good at that and said, you'll feel fresh. And that's from him coming. I then subsequently played for England after that.
Interesting.
I know the Kiwis tried to get him back, didn't they? When he first started with Samoa and he was playing so well, they started trying to tinker with the regulations if they couldn't get him back, because at the time they were
unlike them.
No, very unlike them. But that's how good he was. I mean, he was a hell of a good player.
He was probably, when he came to Saints, he was probably one of the world best scrum halves.
Yeah,
I would say.
How important is Franklin's Gardens itself going to be on Friday night? I mean, I remember the semi-final. I think it was against Leicester, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I'd never heard Franklin's Gardens like that previously. I mean, I wouldn't say I always found the crowd to be quite genteel, but they weren't hostile in a Gloucester kind of way, it had an atmosphere of its own, and it was never really. Normally, it wasn't that edgy, but that night you could have cut that with a knife. I mean, it was a fantastic atmosphere there. Do you think that will be replicated this time?
Yeah, I do. I think Friday night games at Saints is always superb. I look back, we played Munster in a Heineken Cup game on a Friday night, and that's the first experience I had probably of a full house at Franklin's Garden, and it wasn't hostile, but it was very loud. But that Leicester game will always live in anyone's memories. I don't think I've really watched it back or anything, but that atmosphere, you couldn't hear yourself. And I think it helped that it was Leicester. The atmosphere probably helped that Celeste got sent off. It probably helped that a few of the decisions didn't go our way with things that they could have got yellow carded. Gonover could have got red carded. So the crowd were just getting more and more on their high horses. And, you know, that last 20 minutes was probably something I've never replicated and played in since then.
It was just an astonishing night. Astonishing. It was brilliant. Yeah.
You know, and it was two good teams playing against each other, and we found a way again to win, you know. You know, Tom would try and then eking out the last minute to get into that final.
One thing that we haven't mentioned, and this is quite an interesting one, is Maro Itoje has 169 minutes of rugby left this season, because there's either a 35 game cap for player welfare or a 2,400 minute cap, and he's coming up to that. What do we make of that? Does Mark, obviously it's fairly unbelievable that he's played so much rugby, but does Mark McCall have something to think about there? Obviously, as it is, he's not playing every game on the England tour. But the more he plays in the semi-final and potentially final, all of a sudden he's got 20 minutes left. If he plays,
I think it's a sign of Saracens, to me, have struggled a bit this season. And I'm not saying they haven't reached the highs occasionally. They have. When they absolutely murdered Quins, wasn't it, at Tottenham?
Yeah.
And very good at Bristol. But I think they've played Maro more than they wanted to. And they've had to get them through some sticky patches.
Yeah.
And now you've got the banquet of consequences, as Shakespeare used to call it. There's going to be an issue if they get to the final for England.
Yeah, but I think I agree with you. They've had to play their bigger players more. You know, Sarries of old have been very good at player welfare and looking after their players and send them on holidays, which they still do. But because they've not been guaranteed, they've always sat at the top of the pile, haven't they, in Premiership games? They've gone away with England and they've been 10 points clear, and they've come back in, and the players they've got in the squad they've always been quite relaxed where they've had to play. But from a Premiership club point of view, Mark McCall will not be worried about the England stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if Maro Itoje has an opportunity to play every minute in the semi because he has to, and every minute in the final, Mark McCall will want Saracens to win, which is the right thing to do. You play with your mates for, 20 odd weeks. You want to win these big Premiership finals. They mean so much to you because you've put, you know, a whole season or a couple of seasons into it. He'll be worried about Saracens. The England stuff will have to wait, and they'll have to go from there, because I can't see the semi-final being at a canter for any team. So they're going to want Maro on the whole time.
How long's he got left, did you say, Ollie?
169 minutes.
169 minutes. Okay.
So if they got the final, we'd have 9 minutes left.
Yes.
Yeah, so if the final
not even worth going on tour.
No.
So if the final went to extra time and there's 2 points in it, Mark McCall is not.
I mean, if they get to the final, say, and they go to extra time, does he have to come off?
You'd think so, surely.
You can see it happening, can't you?
But no coach would take him off.
I wonder what, I mean, the interesting thing is, what is the sanction if they don't?
Exactly. I mean, there would be one.
Well, would there?
I would think so, surely.
But I don't think a player would want to come off. If someone told me, "Oh, Dicko, your minutes are up," I'd tell them to bugger off, and I'd be like, "You're not taking me off this pitch in a semi or a final."
Mark McCall will be ordered to stand on a stage in a clown's outfit and tell jokes for half an hour. That's the sanction.
So pretty much what I'm saying,
because he won't be able to do that. He could be in the double act with Borthwick.
Can you clarify, Ollie? So 150 will have minutes left. No, what was it?
169.
Okay, but when does the season end and when does it begin? So if he plays 160 minutes in a semi-final and final, is that right? He would have 9 minutes left to play for England this season.
New Zealand tour, yeah. I think it resets when summer tours are over, and then
that's the logical bit. So it is actually a massive problem. It's already a problem. He's going to have 80 minutes on the clock already.
I mean, Steve Borthwick, an ex-Saracens man, is probably praying Saracens lose in the semi-final.
Well, at least you get one test out of him this summer, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
first one against New Zealand.
That's so strange. That is,
they're playing Japan.
They're going to be able to play in one test.
Yeah.
I think there'll be exceptional circumstances.
Oh, they will on this one, yeah.
The new rule, the Maro rule.
It is very bizarre. But I mean, it's interesting what you said, Lee, that Mark McCall will obviously be thinking about Saracens and Saracens only in the semis and final. Do you think that would have been the case for the whole season? And that's why we're now in this position? Do you think?
Yeah, of course.
Well, you don't think he would have had, okay, well, he needs his minutes for England in the back of his mind?
I wouldn't as a coach.
Yeah.
You know, if you're slogging it in, week out through 20-something weeks plus the Heineken Cup and all that for your club. You know, I know that Saracens have got a very good relationship with England and Steve Borthwick, but, you know, there is no better feeling than winning the Premiership with your mates who you've slogged out years or months of training where you've woken up thinking, I don't want to train today or whatever, and you've had to get yourself in there and train. The coaches are going to be thinking, you know, this is it. We need to win this final, and whatever the consequences are after that are after that. You know, they've had a indifferent season, Sarries, so Mark McCall's had to play Maro Toji and Owen Farrell a bit more, but they're contracted to Saracens. That's fundamentally their first and foremost. Absolutely. Is that Sarries is their number one priority. England's great. We want every director of rugby wants their players to play for England and things like that, but they're contracted to Saracens, and you know they need to win. It's like the Northampton boys contracted Northampton first.
It's a really, really interesting issue. I mean, one solution is that if Sarries do get to the final, Courtney Lawes comes out of international retirement, and then you put him in the row in New Zealand. Just Lee, speak about. I mean, one thing we've said is, do you pick Courtney for the Lions with the way he's playing at the moment? Because he's red hot.
I think he's first on the team sheet. I honestly do. I can't get over. Well, I can get over because I've been there and done it with him. He's actually getting better. So like he would walk back into the England team now. You know, I would pick him. I'd have already been on the conversation with him saying, yeah, I know you're going to France, but please don't book anything for this time. You're pretty much going on the line. You know, his game over the past 3 or 4 years has just gone up with he's probably arguably the best 6 second row in the world at the moment. From a point of view of what he does, what he brings, he's not an ex-Abez of that physical just beast. His ability when you watch him to track back and make cover tackles in the 60th, 70th minute, you know, there's not many second rows in the world can do that. But also his carrying game, his jackling game, his game understanding as well for me. He really understands rugby now.
I
can only second that.
No, I mean, he's probably been the best second row /6 in the world for the last 2-3 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, Steph Dutois is a similar athlete, but he doesn't play second row much these days, does he? He is almost always 6. But they're the same sort of athlete.
As a rounded rugby player, Courtney's twice the player I thought he would be 10 years ago.
It was raw, so you got to remember Courtney only started playing rugby at 16.
Yeah.
So he only started playing. I remember him coming in and, God, what was the game? We played our first year in the Premiership. We played against Burgoyne in a final, and he absolutely killed Morgan Parra. Because I think to start with, he was just a sort of a bang second row. You know, just went around hitting people and carried and didn't really understand it. And he just developed through the roof over the years. You know, got better and better, a little bit of a slow burner. And then over these last, as you say, in 4 years, he's probably arguably been the best rugby player around on the planet, if I'm honest, of how he transforms games. He can turn a game on its head. You know, if you're on your 2 metre line and Courtney's over the ball, you ain't moving.
And he was a big game player from day dot as well. I mean, I remember he finished Toby Flood's final back in 2013, and then he absolutely smashed Charlie Hodgson, didn't he, the next year?
Yeah.
Why is yours pick on the little bloke?
Oh God, he hurts big boys as well. Don't you worry. But no,
and every tackle textbook, I still can't get over it. Can you remember an illegal? Well, there probably is one out there having laid down the gauntlet, but he's so textbook in his tackling. He shames every big forward the way he gets down and hits them.
But I say that I use Courtney so much at school. So when big tall lads are like, oh, I can't get down there, I'm like, watch Courtney Lawes. Yeah. You know, he's 6'8", and he just size people down, gets back to his feet, is over the ball. Obviously hits them hard sometimes, but his ability to tackle quick players and get that low, there's no excuse for anyone else, because he's the epitome of low tackles and then getting to his feet.
Yeah.
100%. Brendan, I know you need to get going.
I'll leave you my prediction, shall I?
Yeah, just can I get your 2 semi-final winners, and then I'll go through the rest.
I've heard everything and agree with much of what you say about Saracens, but I don't make them favourites. I make Northampton favourites. I think it's Northampton's year. Friday night at Franklin's, I think we're going to see an outstanding performance from them. They'll have to work for it. Of course they will. But I see them getting through. And I think something good is happening at Bath. Rec, again. I read some stat about, first and second, something like 90% of the finalists in all Premiership finals have been first and second in the regular season. I think they'll have just enough for a very, very determined Sale side. So 1v2 for the final for me.
You won't get to hear the rest of ours, but I'm sure you'll listen back as you do with every episode.
Of course.
Probably.
Anyway, see you guys. Nice meeting you there.
Take care, Brendan.
Take care.
Well done, Brent.
Good man.
Lee, before we get everyone's predictions, do you want to do your random rugby 15, the 15 quick fire question section?
Yeah, go.
Let's blitz through that very quickly. Nickname?
Worm.
Worm.
The Worm or Dicko.
Is worm to do with you being able to do the worm?
I can do the worm, but also Stephen Myler and other people used to just think I used to worm around on the pitch, just get myself into little different positions and it just stuck. He was also called Worm as well. I was called a few other names, which I won't mention on here.
But for older listeners, what is the worm?
Oh, Chewy.
Like a dance move where you lie on the floor and you're like.
For older listeners, what is a dance?
Like that. But yeah, that. And then Dylan used to call me some other words, which I won't mention.
Myler was called Worm as well. That must have got confusing.
Yeah, it's to both of us. I think we should call each other Worm.
Yeah, I thought it was called Duck Pond.
Who? Myler?
Myler, yeah.
Nah, Sensible Stephen. Sensible Stephen, we used to call him.
Stephen. Best, I saw in an interview, I think it was an O2 Inside Line, that he was called Duck Pond because of what was going on here.
Yeah, maybe. He's got a few. He's got a few.
Best rugby memory.
Probably winning the Premiership final. As I said before, I don't think you can have a different environment where obviously we won the double that year, but winning that Premiership is the pinnacle of club rugby for me.
Most embarrassing rugby memory.
Probably losing in the Heineken Cup final when we were so nailed on after the first half. That was we got completely and utterly embarrassed in that second half by a good Leinster team. That was tough to take.
Pre-game tune.
I'm not really a music man, if I'm honest.
At all? Not
really, no. I used to pre-match rather than music. I used to just listen to everything that was in the change room, but I used to always do like the crosswords or the kiddies corners in the programs.
So when you do the worm,
me and Ben Foden used to sit there, home or away, and get the program and just go through the spot the difference and stuff.
Chewy, that's one for the older listeners, isn't it?
Yeah,
it was spot the ball in my age.
It was, yeah. There was some of that on there.
So when you do the worm, do you just do it to total silence?
I just do it to anything. When people say do the worm, you do it. Just I listen. To be fair, all music's like now, even now.
Do the worm.
No. My ribs don't do it anymore.
Have you ever sought help, Lee?
What about the worm?
Well, doing the worm inside to no music at all.
Just got to get on with it.
At least he knows what it is.
Well, indeed. But having known what it is, he would also know that it's meant to be done to music.
Doesn't have to be music.
Post-game meal.
Post-game, always like a McDonald's.
Oh,
McDonald's or a Chinese, just something. If it was an away trip, we arrived back at Franklin's Garden, it was all be a McDonald's because it's right next to the ground.
Yeah.
Home games would be like a Chinese takeaway or something.
I'm sure the team nutritionist approved of Mac.
I was horrific. My pre-game was fish and chips, so.
I'm not sure that would pass now. Best player you've played against?
Oh God, it's always tough. This one, I always find it hard. Will Genia or Aaron Smith were the two best I've played against.
How many times was that? Both for England?
Both for England, yeah. Both for England. So autumn internationals, I played Genia. I did Genia, Smith, and then Pienaar.
Was that 2013 or 2012?
No, 2014 maybe. I can't remember.
Was it? Oh,
one of the two autumn internationals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Them ones. They're probably the best nines I've played against. The players. Someone like I had the privilege of playing against Brian O'Driscoll, and he was like a magician. To be fair,
that is a hell of a. It was 3 consecutive weeks you played against Genia Smith. Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal. Best player you've played with?
Best player I played with is obviously a couple. We mentioned Courtney, but best player I played with was Sammy Manoa.
Nice.
Just different gravy. Sky could have been the limit for him. If he was English, he'd be 90 cap. No. He was different breed of animal for me.
Him in the row, he could play anywhere from 4 to 8, really, but him in the row with Courtney was terrifying.
He could just do different things with the ball that probably wasn't taught, was just natural.
Favourite player right now?
Favourite player? Oh, God. The stereotypical one is Dupont, isn't it? Favourite player? I really enjoy watching Cheslin Colby. For a little lad, because I was told you're too small. For a little lad, just what he does is just tremendous.
Rugby idol.
So I didn't have a rugby idol. My sporting idol was Tanya Gray Thompson.
Wow.
Yeah, and really weird. Like, I never had a sporting. You got your Van der Sazens and people like that, but never did. I wasn't really big into the rugby idol type thing. Tanya Gray Thompson, I watched her in the Olympics one time, and her story was told, and then I was like, she's my idol. And then randomly, no joke, her child went to Barney School. In my first year at school, her kid was there, and I met her at the airport, her picking her kid up, and I froze. I couldn't say anything.
How old were you?
Well, I was an adult then, so I was. No, this is just recently. So
this is really recent.
5 years ago, yeah, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So her child is at very, very little risk of detention.
She's gone. She was in my first year. She's gone. But no, she got special treatment. She wasn't in any detention.
Favorite stadium?
Other than Franklin's Gardens, Twickenham.
Favorite gym exercise?
I didn't like the gym.
Yeah, given the fish.
You can ask anyone. Like gym for me wasn't. I did it, but it wasn't my forte.
All right, well, but most tolerable gym exercise then?
Bench press, maybe.
Occupation if rugby didn't exist.
I'd joined the army.
Oh, cool. Oh,
So I'm from an army background, but I joined the Royal Marines, so I actually joined up. I did the 3-day course in the Royal Marines.
Yeah.
I was 17, 18, my last year of school, because I was always going to join up and play rugby or squash or cricket through there. And then John Fletcher dropped me a message saying, do you want to come to Falcons on trial? So I did that and then look back.
Yeah, wow. So if the pro contract hadn't come through, you would have gone straight into the Marines.
But the pro contract was never going to be there. Like,
Sorry,
throughout my whole career of playing schoolboy rugby, I wasn't in the county, wasn't in the England squads, didn't do any of that. It was very much, my path was always going to go to the Marines, and then you get someone like John Fletcher who believes in you and says,
yeah,
come up for a trial in your last year, you do it, and
amazing.
50 years later I'm back.
Superstitions.
I used to always have to wear the same cycling shorts, the same socks. I used to have to have beans and sausage on toast in the morning of the game.
So you'd have fish and chips the night before and beans and sausage.
Yeah, and then Skittles, Haribo, and a blue Powerade on the way to Franklin's Gardens.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, sweet tooth.
Unbelievable. Rugby law you would change?
Probably the caterpillar rule.
Nice.
Kind of stuff. I think if you can box kick, you should be able to box kick straight from the breakdown.
Do you think any current scrum halves would get rid of the caterpillar rule?
I think they would.
Really?
I think they would. You look at Dupont, just gone.
Yeah.
He doesn't kick with a massive caterpillar, does he?
Yeah.
I think Alex Mitchell probably can do it. You know, it's a law that they've got to do, and they're doing it. But for me, I think it's more exciting. You know, when you've got a big second row screaming at you and can see you, the technique's got to be spot on.
It's a good tabloid headline, isn't it? Worm bans caterpillar.
Nice, Chewy. That's the first good one of today.
Not really.
Well, I know I enjoyed that one. It got 2 laughs. Laughs. Best thing about working in rugby.
Just the camaraderie, being with your mates week in, week out. You know, I say to the kids now at school or my boys, there's no, what do you miss most about rugby? And I say the changing room.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can replicate a rugby changing room day to day. The day-to-day changing room and even a match day changing room, a win or a loss or the emotions that fly around in that changing room. If the walls could speak in changing rooms, it'd be unbelievable.
Given the reputation rugby changing rooms have, that's a good headline, isn't it? Lee Dickson misses rugby changing room.
Yeah, you do, but it's the day-to-day ones. It's, you know, you spend half your life, you know, what did I do, 15 years? You probably spend half the time in a changing room with your mates.
Yeah.
Kicking around, having coffee nowadays. Causing trouble.
Right, thank you for doing that, Lee.
No.
There were some great answers in there. Let's get everyone's predictions. Lee, I'm going to come to you last.
Cool.
That's okay. Kano, we'll come to you first. I just need your 2 winners. I'm going exactly the same as Brendan. I think Northampton will get it done and Bath will get it done. So 2 home wins. Kano?
Yeah, it's very difficult to go against that. It's a bit boring, but yeah, I'd say the same. I'd say 2 home wins.
Chewy?
I think I find them very difficult. I think if Saracens, they'll be very emotionally charged, you would imagine, because this could be Farrell's last 80, etc., etc., etc. All the stuff that's sloshing around it, but Northampton have been so terrific, and I think Franklin's Gardens will make a big difference on Friday. So I take Northampton to win. I find the game at the Rec tight, really tight, because if Bath will have to scrummage, and they'll have to scrummage really well. I think Sale pose a genuine physical threat to them, which is not to say Bath are small or fragile particularly, but I think Sale, with the wind in their sails up front and George Ford behind, are dangerous. And in a tight game, they have exactly the kind of game that wins. Just for difference sake, I take Sale to pinch it by a couple.
Yeah, I don't think that they're.
Well, you've already said that.
Yeah, I know, but I don't. But you've given some reasons, and I'll give some reasons. I don't think that the Bath pack will be second to Sale. I don't think that they'd be able to live with themselves if they were. And I think Dupont has made a huge difference on the tight head.
Yeah, he has. Yes, he has.
And I think I'm not sure that Bevan Rod is quite at that level yet.
Well, he does some things better than others.
Well, he's very good around the field.
Well, he's very, very good at chucking himself on the floor as well.
Lee, sorry, Lee, I should have come to you before. You wouldn't have had to sit through that.
That's all right.
What are your? You're not betting again.
I'll start with the Bath Sale one. I agree with both points. I'm actually going to go Sale as well. I think Sale might.
So we're almost down the middle for that one.
I think Sale have also been there. They've been in some finals. I think George Ford will kick the lever off the ball a little bit. I think Bath are a similar side to Northampton, that they can run themselves into blind ice a little bit here and there. They can run from everywhere. Finn Russell is a magician, but you also can sometimes go over the top. I think Sale will be structured, that little South African influence. I think Cowan Dickey coming back and playing quite good rugby at the moment probably brings a different edge to them. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be close, but I've just got a feeling a bit of northern grit going down there, pumped up by Al Sanderson. You know, probably everyone is thinking Bath this, Bath that. The Sale boys will be going in as underdogs, and I think they'll just probably ruffle a few feathers early doors, but I can see it being close. So I'm going to go Sale. And then in the Friday night one, you know, I'm always going to go Saints. I am, you know, and that's not just because I'm a Saints boy. You know, Sarries are a superb team, but I don't think you can say Saints deserve it because it means absolutely nothing in knockout rugby. Everything that's gone in the past is gone now in knockout rugby. But I think Saints will have a bit between their teeth. You know, Dallas will have them well drilled, well emotionally charged for it. He'll know exactly what Saracens are bringing. But I also think it's going to be close, and I think there'll be ebbs and flows, and it will be a last couple of minutes, either a drop goal or something, a little turnover from Courtney on the 5-metre line that will sort of transform the game. But I'm going to go Saints. Saints Sale final for me.
So two of us are going. We're all going Saints. Two of us going Saints Sale. Three of us going Saints Bath. Well, obviously, massively exciting weekend. Lee, I'm guessing you're still in Bordeaux on Friday.
Friday night, yeah, we're watching it. We've already found a place to watch. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! So you're going to a pub?
We are, yeah. There'll be a few road gigs.
Very nice, very nice. Well, enjoy the games, guys, and yeah, we've got Craig Doyle joining us next week to preview the final. So we look forward to that. And Lee, massively appreciate you joining us on your holiday. And yeah, all the best with the rest of your time at Barnard Castle.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Lee.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks, boys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.